Good afternoon, welcome to the Sports, Health and Exercise webinar hosted by Brunel University. During the next hour, you'll have the opportunity to view two presentations. The first will be presented by Dr. Dan Bishop, who will be talking about the course, and the second presentation will be by one of our current students. At the end of the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. You should do this by typing a question into the panel in front of you and clicking submit. You may need to open up your question bar on the right hand side of your screen. It would also be useful if you could type your name so that we can read it out when we read the question. I now have the pleasure in presenting Mr. Dan Bishop.
Hello folks, welcome to our webinar, the Sport, Health and Exercise Sciences at Brunel University in London. So I'm Dr. Dan Bishop, I'm a member of academic staff here, and as per the front slide, I'm a lecturer and researcher, and I think that's very important because we're a research-led institution here, and that means a lot of what we deliver in the classroom is dictated by what we do in the research labs and elsewhere. So it's very much at the cutting edge of teaching. Right, I thought I'd choose a few images that would give you a flavour of what life is like at Brunel here. So if we start at the top left, you can see we have the Hamilton Centre, which houses a lot of function suites and conference rooms, as well as our bank and some retail outlets, including our campus store. And not least for you students, there's a bar on that first floor there, which has a lovely little balcony overlooking the central concourse. And in the summer, you can really dream yourself away to somewhere a lot warmer and a lot balmier than London typically is, if we're honest. The second image at the top there, that's an unusual view of our outdoor gym. And I think this is a reflection of the way the campus is going generally, insofar as we're looking to maximise our green spaces and make it a fantastic place to live and work. And this outdoor gym is actually within sight of my building, Heinz Wolf building. And it's nice to look out on, but even nicer to actually go and use. And you'll see students most of the year round having a little play with all of these toys, and I'm sure that you have seen something similar in the UK, if not elsewhere. And the final image, top right, is our very grandiose entrance building, the Eastern Gateway, and that's where our main reception is, but we also have some state-of-the-art lecturing facilities that you will be able to take advantage of during your time here as a student. And speaking of lecturing facilities that are state-of-the-art, if you look bottom left, that's our classic building, which has actually been involved in a couple of films, the titles of which you probably won't know, but that's our lecture centre. And in there, despite the fact that it's a building some 50 years old, are some lecture theatres that have been kitted out to the highest spec, which includes Panopto, our university recording software, which means that lectures can be captured live and then they can be uploaded to our VLE, our virtual learning environment, just in case you can't make the lecture, so that you can watch it at your own leisure. And then in the middle there, well, it's a number of things, that building. We've got a Costa coffee outlet, which you'll be pleased to hear about if you're a caffeine addict, as I am. But also to the right there, that's some of our library building you can see. And in the time that I've been here as a member of staff, which is kind of about 8 years, that building has really evolved to house a lot of different services, not least the state-of-the-art library facilities, but also our ASK team, which is our academic skills team. And that's something that's gone from strength to strength in terms of numbers of staff and the variety of services and the quality of services that they provide. And finally, on the right-hand side, I thought this image was a nice illustration of all of the little nooks and crannies that provide private study spaces for students. And these two students you can see are sitting in a window somewhere with a stunning view of the campus, and you can see natural light coming in from above as well, amidst all of the library books. And there are lots of places like this around students that are very conducive to quiet study. So more specifically for our division, because sport, health and exercise sciences is what you're interested in, so from top left, you're looking at our state-of-the-art biomechanics lab. And that's actually a friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Tom Korf, who is a biomechanist. And he's surrounded by, well, a lot of equipment. But one thing I'd like to draw to your attention are all of those cameras that are pointing at him with glowing red peripheries around the lenses. And these are infrared motion capture cameras. And we use these a lot, well, in skill acquisition and motor learning for psychology, but also in biomechanics, to plot human movement in a three-dimensional way, such that we can analyse the minutiae of movement in very, very precise ways that give us some information about how well, or perhaps not so well, people are moving when they're injured, or alternatively when they're learning new skills. Okay, top middle image. I hope you all recognise that guy right in the centre there. So Usain and Johan Blake, who was the silver medalist in London 2012, came to train here regularly in the lead up to the London Olympic Games. And the other people you can see around Usain here are colleagues of mine from physiology and biomechanics, who were lucky enough to collect some data from Usain, which, as you can imagine, has been embargoed because he doesn't want to give away his trade secrets. And top right, we have a research laboratory. And this is a hive of activity most times of the year, and it's run by my esteemed colleague, Professor Jose Gonzalez Alonso. He's a physiology professor, and the two guys you can see in white coats there are a former PhD student and a former postdoctoral researcher. And that person lying on the bed is not a patient. I think they've actually voluntarily done everything that they're doing there. I've been a participant in that laboratory. I've had a catheter inserted in my groin. I've swallowed a balloon in the name of science there to measure my intrathoracic pressure, amongst a whole host of other things. And on that note, I think it's important as a member of staff to do some of these things so that when you're reviewing ethics applications, you can truly appreciate the impact of research on the participants. And bottom left, talking about sports, this is our fantastic sports hall. Over the far side there, in blue, you can see the bleachers. Excuse me, there's something electronic talking to me in the background. And at the far end of the sports hall you can see our climbing wall, which is quite an impressive structure actually. Being a Londoner and having schlepped around the climbing walls in London, I can say this is actually one of the best ones that I've seen in terms of the challenges of the different climbs and routes. And of course it's set up as a multi-court facility, this sports hall as well, so you can see basketball, and we can accommodate badminton and volleyball, a variety of other sports very easily. In the middle there is our bespoke netball hall, which is another impressive facility, which is only several years old. And then finally, bottom right, we have the Brunel Sports Park. There you can see our athletics track, of course, with the field in the middle, and we have a series of 3G football and other sport pitches, as well as traditional AstroTurf pitches, and then further down to the right of the figure we have our tennis courts near to our clubhouse, which is just above those as you look. So, what I love about Brunel, we have a few of our students here. Ewan, who's in the top left image, and you might recognise the guy that he's with, he ended up doing a placement just around the corner from here with a company called Lucozade Vibina Suntory. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, but Suntory are the world's third biggest soft drinks manufacturer, and a couple of years ago they bought the Lucozade brand from GlaxoSmithKline, or GSK as you might have heard them called. And Ewan, I think, has really embraced the fact that he's able to train for his sport, which is cycling. So he does 10 and 25 mile time trials quite regularly, and can do 25 miles at about 30 miles an hour. So next time you're a passenger in the car, get whoever's driving to drive at 30 miles an hour, then look out the side. So if you're not a cyclist, you'll just appreciate how fast he's going through muscle power alone. And you and I know has not only appreciated being able to do such a fantastic placement on our doorstep, it's literally a few miles away, their head office, but also the opportunity to fit his training, because he is effectively a full-time athlete as well around his studies, and he's really thriving on our human performance pathway. And then, well, in various places in the other images, actually, we have Zoe, who's in that red dress, and her friend Abbie, and you can see, I think, both of them in both of the remaining images. Generally in a lot of colour, whether it's paint splashed on them and otherwise. And in the middle of both those photos is Ricky. And one thing that all of these three, who are student ambassadors for us at Open Days, say is that they love the environment here at Brunel, how friendly it is, how they get to combine their studies with their interests, and that includes actively pursuing their sports. So each of them are athletes, they're all runners coincidentally. And also the opportunities and doors that are open for them during their time here, which includes placement activity and jobs for that matter. So this is a little bit drier, this material, but nonetheless I think you'll consider it relevant. So these are titles of modules that you will be able to find on the web pages if you haven't done so already, but I thought it quite useful to put a selection of them. So the titles actually span over all 3 years of our full-time programs. We've got some level 1 modules represented here, some level 2 or second year as we call it, and final year modules. One thing I draw your attention to straight away is the axis in the middle there, so those 3 that are in red. So in the second year we have our work-based learning module, and then in the final year currently we have employability and professional development. And these link in with a new scheme that is starting up as from this academic year called Brunel Plus. And I'm sure you will have heard of the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, even if you're not doing them. And you'll know that they have bronze, silver and gold elements to them. Well, it's the same for the Brunel Plus as well. So centrally, our colleagues in the Professional Development Centre have developed this scheme such that when our students go out the door and graduate, they've actually got a lot of these important transferable skills that employers are looking for. You may or may not be aware that employability has become quite a big buzz term in higher education, because there was a time when people did degrees and really came out without much in the way of these transferable skills. Well, Brunel has long since realised that and has addressed it, and that's where Brunel Plus comes in. What I'm pleased to say is that within Sport, Health and Exercise Sciences, we were very much ahead of the curve. So those 2 module titles you see there were something we've embedded in our programs for the last few years, in fact. And so this is your opportunity to get a lot of these soft or transferable skills that will put you hopefully in a much better place when it comes to getting the job that you want. In terms of specific content, I won't go through every other title, but I'll draw your attention to the top left purple one, Fundamentals of Sport, Health and Exercise Sciences. So that's a level 1 module currently, which encompasses what we might call the natural sciences, biomechanics, physiology and psychology. And I personally find those interesting. I consider myself a natural scientist, and it's a necessary evil for those of you who are more drawn to the social sciences of sport, but you'll be pleased to know you're well catered for as well. And depending on the pathway that you've chosen, you'll be able to specialise according to social sciences or natural sciences, which would be our human performance pathway, or maybe even in coaching, for example. So top right we have physical education and sport pedagogy. Pedagogy is effectively the science of teaching, if you like. So it's how we get better at teaching. You will, like I have many a time, taken for granted a good teacher. We always remember when we get a bad one, but often it's the good ones that don't necessarily reside in the memory but have a profound impact on how we subsequently conduct our lives and where we take our career path. And that is absolutely vital and important that we continue to see good teachers coming through. And there may be some of you who are interested in our BSc PE and Youth Sport, for example, which has been specifically designed so that you'll be in a perfect place to go on and claim status as a graduate PE teacher. So if you should be interested in being a PE teacher, then the BSc PE and Youth Sport will be one for you. I'm going to draw your attention back to the left-hand side of this figure, the second one down, physical activity, health and well-being, because this is a theme that is permeated throughout all 3 years of our full-time program. So we realised several years ago that we couldn't continue to be a sports sciences department alone. We're now sport, health and exercise sciences, because it won't have escaped your attention that we're getting older and we're getting bigger, not only as a nation but as a planet. And each one of those by itself would be a problem. Together, it's a bit of a ticking time bomb. And despite what we all know about healthy diet and activity and what have you, it seems as though the incidence of type 2 diabetes, which is closely linked to obesity, is on the increase. So producing more graduates who have a sophisticated awareness of what it means to be physically active, what the barriers are to physical activity, be they perceived or real, and how we might maximise people's enjoyment of physical activity and exercise, it's going to be increasingly important. So that's why this element is included in there. And I'll pick on one more title. Let's talk about young people, sport and identity, actually, so down that left-hand side. There's no getting away from it. Sport is an important social phenomenon, and that's something we can take for granted if we're very physically active and have been from a young age and have always taken part in sport. But actually some people aren't so physically active and they don't participate in sport as regularly as we may think they do. And sport can unite and divide in equal measure. So we very often see the tribalism associated with, say, Premier League football. And if you're a football fan, you'll understand where I'm coming from. We're typically quite partisan, so very supportive of our own team, but not so supportive of the other team. Or more often than not, and this is very topical at the moment, given what happened yesterday, referees. They come in for quite a lot of criticism. And those of you who saw the Leicester's draw will know what I'm talking about. But young people identify through sport in a myriad of ways. And I've done a fair amount of work as an applied sports psychologist in elite sport. And it's an interesting phenomenon, but I deal with career transitions for people who are in their teens. And by that, I mean, they get to the point where they realise that their dream goals are not necessarily going to be fulfilled. So they're not going to become a top 10 ATP tennis player. And the sporting identity is still very, very strong in them. And that athletic identity is something they will hopefully take throughout their life. But that needs to be dealt with. And people need to understand that there are these transitions and that we need the right kind of psychologist to support those transitions. So young people's sporting identity will sensitise you to the fact that sport can be an absolutely integral part of some young people's identity. Conversely, not so much of others. It's how do we engender that, and how do we actually mitigate for it when it's incredibly strong, and for someone to lose their career trajectory in sport, and for that to then therefore be compromised. Right, I've spent a lot of time talking about that slide, but there was a lot of content. I wanted to give you a flavour of the current placements that we have and some that have been done recently. So that's a map of London we've got in the background, and I've travelled all around the globe, and I have to say I think London is the greatest city on earth. I'm a little bit biased as a Londoner born and bred, but nonetheless it's true. So if you look around those logos, I mentioned Lucozade Ribena Suntory, which is on the left-hand side there, just above the university logo. It is just around the corner. The only reason those two logos aren't nearer to one another is because there isn't enough space. And just above that, you'll see Canon, because we have some students on our joint honours programme, which includes business studies. One of whom, a personal tutee of mine, Dario, spent time at Canon Europe's head office, again just around the corner at Stockley Park, at the same location as Lucozade Ribena Suntory. One thing that won't have escaped your attention is also we have a lot of Premier League and Championship football clubs in the area as well, and extensive connections with them. And if you look down that list of potential roles down the left-hand side, the middle one there, performance analyst, that's something that's becoming increasingly popular. So I'm sure you'll be aware of all the statistics that are generated and regurgitated in sporting context, be it tennis, football, you name it. Well, performance analysts are often behind a lot of those statistics. They're people who sit down and painstakingly code a video so they can say, for example, how many assists Jamie Vardy might have had in the season and how many goals. So then you can see in the media the next day that Jamie Vardy has had a hand in more goals than any other Premier League player. Of course, but it's so much more than that, because they're not doing it just to create media headlines, but they're doing it to support football clubs in London and elsewhere to actually get the most out of individual team members' performance and the team as a whole. And Brentford, just down the road from us, so they're hovering around in the middle of the Championship at the moment. I've had a little bit of involvement with them in a psych capacity, but on walking around their training ground, it's clear to see just how much weight they give to the likes of performance analysis and psych support and general physiological support, including nutrition. So that's why if you go a little bit further down the list on the left-hand side, you can see we have a sports science fitness intern. So a number of our students have spent time at places like Brentford doing sports science physiology support predominantly. So, recent graduates. Benjamin, I mentioned Lucozade Ribena Suntory, so it wasn't just Ewan who was based there. He's also worked there, Benjamin, and had the opportunity to go to lots of expos, including the Marathon Expo, as Ewan did, and stand up and educate people as to why people should be drinking Lucozade Sport, for example. Not a tough sell, because people drink it when they're not playing sport for the most part, but nonetheless, that was part of his job. But it's also educating people about the science behind the product. Larissa actually took over from me at the Sutton Tennis Academy. which is based in southwest London. She's the lead sports psychologist, and having graduated from our master's programs, she's now she's a chartered psychologist, and she's leading the entire psych program there at Sutton, which is one of the LTA's high performance centres. And Stephen has gone right through all of the echelons of the education system here at Brunel. He did an undergraduate degree with us, went on to do his master's, and on that note, increasingly students are looking to do that, and we have a seamless transition from our undergraduate to our master's programs. And then went on to do a PhD. He's a physiologist by trade, so he did a lot of poking and prodding and taking samples from people in that research lab you saw earlier on. And you might notice the name Professor Gonzalez Alonso, which I mentioned earlier on there. But he's now a lecturer at a competitor institution I won't name. So we'll move on. And Jibril, like a couple of our graduates, started up his own business. Jibril graduated quite a few years ago now and set up this business with a partner. And this is quite lucrative, and I imagine all of you listening at some point, if you're based in the UK, will have had someone come in when you're in primary school and deliver your PE solutions for you and do your games, playing football and what have you. Well, that's the kind of thing that Jibril and colleague do very, very successfully. And when I say successfully, I think it's fairly lucrative as well. And he's one of 3 people who've graduated in the past 6 or 7 years I can think of, Brunel people, who've gone on to successfully run one of these businesses. And on the sport development side, very important, getting young people enthused about, excited about sport. She works in our local borough at Hillingdon, did her undergraduate and master's here, very affable, very organised student, and she's now working as what she describes as a community sports coach, but I think her role is quite broad and varied. Okay, well, that's me in the photo, waving at some prospective students. I will be taking your questions at some point, but I think I'm going to hand over to my colleague Gerdit for the time being.
Okay, great. Thank you for such an interesting presentation, Dan. We'll now be hearing from our current student, Martina Stonkes. If you bear with us 1 second, and we'll be with you.
Hello, I'm Martina Stonkes. I'm a second year human performance sports science student. As you can see, I am a current student here. Right, that's me. I'm Lithuanian. I was born there and I moved here when I was 3. So I was basically brought up here in England. That's why I can't really hear much of an accent. And yeah, I'm making the most out of university. I didn't really know what to expect. I'd heard stories, but generally I've just loved every second of it, and I really recommend anyone to go university. It's just been such a great experience, and I already know I'll miss it when I leave, so I need to make sure I keep making the most out of it for the rest of my second year and third year. Why Brunel? There's so many things. There's a lot of diversity, a good mix of students. There's many international students. You can hear amazing stories from people, from really anyone that you meet. Everyone's friendly, looking to cooperate with each other. There's also a good focus on getting good results, even in first year. The library's there, and pretty much all the students use it. There's also a wide range of shops, places to eat, and in the town, Uxbridge has plenty to offer, a shopping centre, places to eat, shop, and it's pretty close because everything here is just connected so well. On campus, I was only 4 minutes away from lectures, library and nightclub 5 minutes away, shopping 15-20 minutes away, and my football training was only 8 minutes away because of the sports park being so close. And yeah, generally it has a good reputation because I remember I hadn't heard of Brunel really before applying for universities, and when I mentioned I was applying, people were like, "Oh, Brunel, I've heard good things about it." I'm like, that's good. So yeah, on to the next slide. The course itself, as you heard from Dan, he explained most of it. now you'll get to hear a bit of my side as a student. Again, the opportunities that this course can lead you to are so broad. As you can see, you can go into any sector, but you still go away after first year having done like a bit of each module. So you can always go on, say, work experience or work placement, and then decide that route's not for you. So you can always then just change from there, because you're still getting a sports science degree and have a good understanding of all the other areas. Then second year, you're going to narrow down some of the choices, meaning you should enjoy it more because you're doing the stuff you're either good at or you've done well at in first year. But for all those students on my course, so many will have different jobs, from personal trainers to PE teachers to developing elite athletes to becoming sports psychologists. And for myself, I try and simmer down to what I want to be, but I'm still quite open to anything. As I said, the placement year can help you decide whether that path is for you, and you gain valuable experience no matter what. The sports science lecturers are also very helpful, and some of them are actually world renowned and do a lot of research for large organisations and companies. You can just type any of the researchers' names and you'll find millions of papers that they've done, and they really do know their stuff. The next slide. Here's some pictures of the societies I'm in: the main three: football, snow club and wheelchair basketball. So I joined wheelchair basketball this year after initial trial day, and it had just formed this year and I loved it. It was great fun. I played a bit of basketball, and I was skeptical about playing it in a wheelchair, but it was really good fun. I even got picked for the university wheelchair basketball championship team, and we went to Worcester and played against not 15, there was 16 teams, but there was group stages, and we had good fun. We came 12th out of 16th, which doesn't sound that great, but for it being the first year, it was really good. And we played against some international students, and I just never thought that would happen, and just suddenly the club formed and so much was done. Also, I play for the third football team. There's 5 football teams, and I actually started in the development squad, which was even lower, and they saw how good I was. I played 1 game for the 5th, got moved up to the 4th, which I played in the first year, and then this year I moved up to 3rd team, and next year I'm hoping to move up to even 2nd team. And finally, I'm part of the Snow Club Society. I go on trips to Hemel Hempstead Indoor Snow Centre, which is located quite nearby, and we sometimes get the minibuses over there and get to either ski or snowboard, or just even watch if you don't want to take part. And I also went on the ski trip this year, which was amazing. I didn't know what to expect again, and I was skeptical first year, which is why I didn't go, but I definitely recommend just going. You make so many friends, and I love skiing myself. It's a thing that when I do, I know I love, and I always want to keep doing, and if I couldn't, then I'd be very unhappy. But yeah, there are so many societies that you can join, but I'm just so busy. Like, you join and you have to get a good balance between your work, studying and social life. Working/volunteering. I've taken up many roles, such as FA Football Activator, where I'm helping to run intramural football here at the university. I also referee some of those games, which is, again, a really hard job, as Dan mentioned. I was a resident schools ambassador when I was on campus. Got to talk about issues in the halls. I was the NUS Student Switch Off Ambassador, where I was helping students to learn about keeping their carbon footprint to the minimum and saving electricity, water. And I'm also a Brunel Sports Science Ambassador, where I help out with webinars, applicant days, just help any students get to feel what it's like to be a student here. I also found my first job at Subway in town, and I worked there for a whole year. And for first year it was fine. I'd say maybe I worked a bit too much, but I still got through my first year, and I started second year working as well, but it was a bit too much, so I had to quit because in my head I could always go work at Subway. Well, the degree is what matters the most. This is why you're here, so you really need to make sure you keep on top of that firstly, and that's why I had stopped working. But you'll learn as you go along, and you'll see what's right for you. Nextly, the support. The university is always listening to the students. They ask for a lot of feedback and then make imminent changes. I've only been here for a year, but so much has changed from the start to the end, mainly because of the students demanding more things. There are always office hours from the lecturers where you can meet them for any advice and for anything you don't understand in the course. Yeah, you can always get any help no matter what it is. There's also psychologists and people just that can help with any problems. A great thing about this uni is London. I just love being in London, as I can travel across it to my home in Kent. Without London being there, it would be a lot more difficult. But mostly for all the activities you can do. As you can see in that picture to the left, that's Wembley, and Brunel is very close to that. It's just a few tube stops down. And I did see England, unfortunately, demolish Lithuania 4-0 in the Euro football qualifiers. It was a good match, and I got to see when Kane came on for his debut, and hopefully he goes on to help England to win the Euros, because then that would be such a good story to see where he started from. And then to the right is a gig that I was at. I love gigs because I get to see, I love to go see live bands when I can, and there's so many going on in Central. There'll definitely be one suited to your taste. There are also many bars, museums, libraries, clubs, comedy nights, shops, and anything you fancy really in Central, including nightclubs and nightlife. There are a variety of clubs and nights that you can have at Brunel. The coach parties are great and relieve all the hassle of travelling into central London on the tube. I did go a few times on the tube, and you have to get night buses back, which can be a hassle, so definitely take the coach. There are different music nights every day at Academy, which is the on-campus club, and I've also gone to some clubs in the centre of London, and they've been great fun with friends. Well, friends, I could talk through so many people that I've met during freshers. Everyone's so friendly and just wants to be friends, so you'll have no trouble finding people that have either similar tastes in you to sport or music, or just people on your course. Some friends I have now were from the Star Uni, some I just met 3 months ago at the ski trip. And yeah, there's just so many people that you will find a crowd that you'll like. My future, I know I need to work hard and make sure that I learn as much as possible so that I will find work easier. Hopefully I'll know exactly what I want to go into after my third year, but for now I'm still open for any opportunity. For one of the questions I got asked during a clearing profile, they asked what would you most like to tell a newcomer to Brunel that no one told you. So my answer was, make sure you go out and make the most of first year. Make lots of friends and be as social as you can be. If you get a job, make sure it's a consistent amount, but don't do it as much. Don't do too much as you can. Always get a job after uni. Make sure you experience things that you won't get to do as much outside of university. Earning money is a good way of making sure that you can go out a lot and not worry about finances as much. And yeah, I just want to inform you. I don't want to spoil the adventure ahead of you, so just go for it. Thank you.
Great, thank you for sharing that interesting presentation with us, Martinez. We're now going to open the session up for a question and answer session. As I mentioned earlier, you need to type in your questions into the chat box, and if you could put your name at the end of the question, we'd really appreciate that. So over to you attendees now. For any questions, please type away.
Wow, looks like we did a good job. Please don't be shy.
Just to confirm, you need to type in the question into the panel on your screen and click submit. You might actually physically need to open the question bar, but there should be a little icon on the screen saying chat, and that's where you type your questions. We're willing to wait for a while, so take your time and get some questions through to us.
Okay, we're not getting any questions at the moment, and that's highly unlikely, I understand from experience. And so my colleague is just going to test to make sure that questions can be sent through. She's actually going to type false question to make sure that the facility is actually working as it should. It's a bit of a bizarre situation, but please bear with us for the time being. That's another way of doing it, of course. That was Martinus taking the initiative there. That's one thing I like about a lot of our student ambassadors. They don't mind taking the initiative. So I'll take it as a reflection of the fact that Martinus and I did a really comprehensive job of telling you everything about Brunel that you can possibly want to know. In which case, if you get the opportunity to rate this webcam, please give it 5 stars.
Yeah, just make sure if you have any questions about applying here, going through clearing, the life at Brunel, facilities, the course, just make sure you ask those questions, because I didn't really, I just sort of found out on the spot, and I'd really recommend asking any of those questions.
So, a few types of question we got, it hasn't come through. But Martinus did that one. Okay, so we're not being recorded now. It's showing.
Yeah, I'll switch my microphone out just while we're in. Let me try again.
You sure it's not a different mic in one of the camera?
That's my mic.
Okay, we found some questions.
Yes, so this is a question from Jill Mentrum. Apologies for the technical delay, first of all of you. The question from Jill is, can you live on campus? And if not, is it easy to find good, reasonably priced accommodation? Will Mintram says that, so maybe you're using a different address, or is that pretend? No, it's not really a typing error, that. Yes, you can live on campus. So we pretty much guarantee accommodation for first years on campus, and the university tries to ensure that all final year students who want to live on campus are accommodated. In your second year, what you tend to do, having made friends, as Martin has recommended you do, is then pair up, well, more than that, actually tends to be 5 or 6 sharing, and find a house. And I was just talking to 2 personal tutees today who've been in the house hunting process, one successfully, another one unsuccessful so far, but he has quite a few more places to view, I think, before he reaches his decision.
Yeah, so first year I was on campus. It was, as they said, guaranteed. And then second year I had met 4 other sports science students, and I'm living in a house with them this current year. And it's been good, but I'm moving back onto campus for third year. There's pros and cons of either one, as you'll probably find out when you're there, and they're generally the same amount. One of the cons living off campus is it can be a hassle with all the bills. So there's 5 of you and one person has to pay it all, and then they split the cost in 5 and the others have to pay them. While on campus, you just pay the one fee every term, and you don't have to worry about heating, water, gas, or anything else. So it's quite easy to just go on campus.
And the second question is from Georgia Silcox, and Georgia said, which course did you say was best cited for teaching PE in the future? Would I need to do teacher training after this? That is the BSc PE in Youth Sport, and what that course does is confers a recommendation, or not as the case may be, but assuming you graduate suitably from the programme, it's a recommendation for qualified teacher status. So you may be aware that a couple of years ago things changed on a national level insofar as programmes didn't necessarily lead directly to obtaining this QTS, as it's called, as a part of the programme, but it's now a recommendation that you can become a qualified teacher, and there may be some period of further training required in order to do that, but this is no different from other comparable programmes up and down the country. So there's a question from Callum Dunn, and it says, Matthew, do you find the work-life uni balance easy to handle? From Callum. I think that means you, Martinus.
It was quite hard, and at the time, yes, there's a lot of stuff to do and it can be stressful, but I knew at the end of the year I'd look back and I'd be happy with how busy I was and how much stuff I achieved. So that being work and earning money and developing skills, I got a 2-1 for my first year. I was very happy with that, which showed that I got the work and uni bit right. And then my social life also increased. I barely went out before coming to university, and now I'm like a social addict. I love going out with friends, and if I'm left alone by myself, I just can't handle it. I have to go out, find people. So you can get it right, and it will differ for every person. I definitely recommend first year just going out and just making the most opportunities. You're not going to get as much just being in your room and watching Netflix.
Thank you very much, Martinus, and thank you, Callum. So our next question is from Akbar Irampai. How does a normal day at Brunel go? Akbar, I think that's one for you, Martinus. I don't think he wants to know about my day. That's not normal.
First year, I think generally compared to other degrees, you have a slightly more open schedule where you have a few lectures through the day, say 2 or 3, which are like around 1.5 hours each, and then you have times in between those to go back to your accommodation and cook or order out, whatever way you want, to eat, and then you usually finish lectures by around like 4. It really depends on what your course is, but it's quite easy, and as I said, I worked quite a lot, so it didn't mean that the course was that demanding first year.
Okay, thank you again, Martinus. And another question from Georgia. Sorry, that should have said suited instead of cited, yes, and I should have read it correctly. So don't worry, Georgia, thank you for that. Hang on, do you find, Callum, yes, do you find the work-life balance easy to handle? You've already asked that one.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So,
it's because we were...
that keeps on, you kept on repeating it for us, Callum, thank you. And Jill, and well, seeing yours. Right, here we go. Thomas Harris. Is it easy to transfer courses after the first year? For example, starting as a general sports science to a degree more focused around psychology, but still in sports and exercise sciences? Tom. That's a very good question, Tom, and the simple answer to that is yes. So all of our students on 5 of our programs, that excludes what we call the joint honours, that's the one with business studies, they all do the same first year. So that means if you get to the end of that first year and decide that that program or pathway, as we sometimes refer to them, is not for you, then it is possible to switch over, even as late as the very beginning of the second year. And this is a feature that for years now, our current students have said they really valued, because you come here and you get to learn what you're good at, what you're not so good at, and what you like and what you don't like so much. With regard to a degree more focused around psychology, Tom, I would say you'd either pick the psychology options at level 2 and level 3, or alternatively, you could select the human performance pathway, which would encompass all of the psychology, as well as those other natural sciences subjects I mentioned, physiology and biomechanics. And there's another question from you, Tom. When and how do you apply for sports scholarships? I think the best thing I can advise you to do over this webinar is to Google Sports Scholarships Brunel, and then you'll get the relevant page come up, and it will tell you all about the timings and the process of the applications. And then finally, we have a question from Alex de la Salle. What MA degrees are available on completion of Sports Health and Exercise Sciences BSc from Alex? Well, just for clarity, an MA is a Master of Arts, and we tend to deal with science programs as per the BSc, which is an MSc. If that's what you're referring to, then we have our MSc Sport Health and Exercise Sciences, and we have a human performance derivative of that, as well as a psychology specific one. But we also have our MSc in Sport and Exercise Psychology, which is accredited by the British Psychological Society. If you are specifically referring to MA degrees, then there are lots of MA degrees available elsewhere on campus. I'm not entirely sure of the requirements in terms of an undergraduate program, but I would be surprised. It's the first time I would have heard of someone going from a BSc degree to an MA that is totally unrelated to their subject area. So that might have been not necessarily a typo, but something you didn't necessarily mean, Alex. By all means, confirm with not a question, but another statement via this interface, if you like. Okay, thank you. And Akbar, we have another question from you. How many lectures would you have in a day, and how long would the duration of these lectures be? Tell you what, I'm going to hand over to Martinus for that.
Again, first year we had lectures on the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. The Wednesdays are always free because of Bucks fixtures, or so whatever sport you do, football, netball, rugby, hockey, they all play fixtures against other universities, and therefore there's never any sports science lectures on that day. So if you don't do any sport, then you can just have a day off. But yeah, so the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I'd say some start earlier at like 9:30, while sometimes you could get lucky and your day starts at 10, 11, and then you'll have a lunch break like in between them. Sometimes you might not, sometimes you might have to starve yourself for a bit. But afterwards, as I said, the day usually ends around 3, 4, again depending on lectures and what term it is. And then the duration, it can vary from 1 to 2 hours, I'd say. They're generally done in like 1 hour 20. So that's the average. There's another question from Georgia. Do you have organised coaching for athletics?
Yes, Martinus is nodding there. Nodding doesn't work particularly well on a webinar and there's no webcam. But yes, indeed we do. So we have a number of sports scholars. They tend to number around 40 or 30 to 40 every year. People are selected, and I've worked as an applied sports site with some of the scholars so far over the past couple of years, and we have some world-class coaches who work with our athletics squad for long jump and sprints and all other kinds of running events for that matter, as well as jumps. So I've worked with one particular athlete who was a pole vaulter. You did need an MSc, Alex, just updating that was an MA. Thank you very much for confirming. I appreciate you taking me up on my offer. And then another question from Callum here. Is the competition high in the football teams at Brunel? I would say, go on, Martin, is keen to get in here.
Yeah, as I said, there's 5 teams and a development squad. There are trials at the start of the year, and there is quite a big turnout. You do have to be, I'd say, good to stand out, but then there are many other ways of getting into the team. So, as I said, I run intramural football for the university, and you can sign up with your friends or course mates or flatmates and play there, and then me and the other people look during that, and if we see that there are people that deserve to be in the football team, they can get called up, to come trial. There's also another trial at Christmas, so when half the year's gone by, there'll be another trial where you can try if you really think that you didn't have a good trial or something. There are ways to go in, but the teams are generally quite good. First team and second team do have a mix of semi-pro players, so unless you're at that level, you can't really aim for that. I played in the Kent League. I wasn't county level, but I played in the Kent League, and as I said, I got into the 5th team, 4th team, and this year's 3rd team. So it varies on the years as well. I'd say some years, you can have a high caliber of players come in, and they'll take a lot of the spots and you'll find it hard, but sometimes it can be weak and you can easily get in. It really depends.
Okay, I think we seem to have reached the end of the questions. So if you have any more questions, then please do ask them. And speak now or forever hold your peace. I was told more once. Right, there we go. So Tom has responded by saying, what is the process for getting into sports teams? I'm mainly thinking of tennis. How often are there competitions, and what is the average rating of the tennis team, if you know? Thanks. Wow. Okay. Process for getting into sports teams. You could probably describe that better than I could.
Yeah, I think tennis have trials as well. They did very well this year. I was just at the Sports Federation Ball, and they won a lot of awards for RAG events, like raising money for charity, and they were one of the most developed clubs. They won also a lot this year. I think one of the men's first team was unbeaten. How often are the competitions? As I said, Wednesdays, all the sports have their fixtures, so they go out, play other unis at home or away. There might be extra competitions, but I don't know about them. And as I said, the tennis team were really good this year. I think all of their teams did well, so it'll be a good standard.
And in terms of the LTA rating, Tom, that's quite hard for me to say because I don't keep close tabs on the tennis team from one year to the next. A few years ago, I had a dissertation student who was a 5-1, and he seemed to think he was quite highly ranked. So if that gives you an idea. You and I both have an idea of what kind of quality of player that is at that age, which was around 21 at the time. And he thought it was one of the better ones. That's about as much as I can say about the standard of teams. I think that's useful. So Akbar's put in another question. What are the perks of being in the football teams? Well, yeah, I can't answer that from first-hand experience. For example, do you play at professional football stadiums or even play against professional teams? I think I can say unequivocally that you don't tend to play at a professional football stadium, unless there's something you know about Martinus, and it's certainly not against professional teams. I don't think there are many who would take the time out of their schedules to play university teams, but Martinus, you might have something to say.
Perks of the football team, you can buy stash and walk around in university in your football kit. Whenever I got my stash, I always felt proud, and it's always good to wear around. You can also, as a part of a sports team, get a silver card to Liquid, where you get free entry before 10:30. So when everyone will be coming later, you can get free entry and get into Liquid early, and they have special drinks prices for those early people. We play on Site 5, which is our grass pitches here at Brunel. They're just like a 5-10 minute walk off campus. And we do play sometimes outside teams, but I don't know how good they are outside of the university. The first team, I think, for their friendlies, they might end up playing maybe some semi-pro teams, but again, I'm not too sure about that. And then you also asked, are there any regular training sessions for the football teams? Usually there's 2 per week, and then your match on Wednesday. Again, you can go with your friends and train some more, train in your own time, but yeah, generally there's 2.
And a question from Will again. Do you have a swimming pool on campus? That's a no, but we do have an Olympic-sized swimming pool just about 1.5 miles down the road. And it's a fantastic facility that's only a few years old. We do have a swimming team, to my knowledge, and always have done, and I dare say they use that facility.
That's the other questions. Again, you can ask any more.
Strictly speaking, you have about 4 minutes, so make the most of those. It's like a gradually shrinking window of opportunity. Some very good questions there, and it's nice to be able to fill in the gaps, very small gaps in our presentation.
Okay, well that looks like the end of the questions. Well, just remains to say thank you to you all for attending the webinar today, and a big thank you to Martinez and Dan for hosting the webinar. We hope you found it interesting and informative, and we hope to be seeing you next year at Brunel. That's the end of the webinar for now, but what we'll do is we'll send you a recording of the webinar just in case there's anything you missed. And if there's any more questions you have our email addresses and you can pop them through to us. Okay, thank you for attending the webinar. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.